we're going through the dep, and he actually got so flustered within the first minute of me testifying, takes the microphone off of here and slams it down and storms out. Pulls off after 5 minutes and comes back in. And then we start going at it again. He eventually got to the point where we're sitting about as close as we are, the records are here, and he takes the stack of deps, 80 deposition transcripts, and just throws them at me.
On video?
On video.
You've done your job. If the expert witness is throwing things at you, insulting you, swearing at you, then you've done your job. All right, everybody, welcome to another great episode of Cases Gone Wild. And do we have a wild, wiki wild show for you today? We have a great guest, and we're going to talk about some of the wildest cases. I'm your host, Jon Marko of Marko Law. I love being a lawyer. I love trying cases. I love the law. And on my podcast, we bring you the craziest, wildest, most interesting cases. You can't make this stuff up. It's real. And today we have a great show in store for you. If you like our show, please watch us. Remember, we're filming here live. You can go to our YouTube channel or on our website. It's markolaw.com, M-A-R-K-O law.com. Share it with your friends and make sure to give us 5 stars or thumbs up or whatever these kids do nowadays. But all right, everybody, without further ado, I have one of my friends and a really good attorney, great attorney, Matt Consolo is here today, a defense attorney. So you have we have more plaintiffs' lawyers than we probably do defense attorneys on the show, but that's okay. Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for
John.
being here, buddy.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me.
You're a great lawyer. I have to say this, and I want to talk about this today, but you are the best lawyer that I've ever seen in taking a deposition of an expert. And I really mean that. I have never seen anyone take such a thorough deposition. It almost caused me to miss my beer tour in Philadelphia that we're going to tell our viewers about this morning. But you're just an excellent lawyer. And I kind of get that feeling when I see you on cases, because, just for our listeners who aren't lawyers out there, when you file a lawsuit, as a plaintiff, I serve it on the defense. Then the defendant gets a lawyer, and then they say, hey, I'm here. I'm going to be defending this. When I see your name on the case when it comes back, I usually have a feeling of, oh, shit, this is going to be a little harder than I would like it. But that means you're a good lawyer, so it's a big compliment.
I and enjoy doing it. We've had our fair share of cases together, and like you said, you're an excellent lawyer. I enjoy litigating with you, because it's it makes you better, keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, for sure. You learn. Yeah. I'm always learning. So tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. You're at Secrest Wardle, which is a really good firm, and you guys actually try cases, which 99.9% of the lawyers out there, at least in Michigan, cannot say that they do.
Yes, we do. We have about 70 attorneys. I'm one of the senior partners over there. There's 6 of us. I think since COVID, when we were doing our tracking, we had about between 20 and 25 cases go to trial, jury verdict trial, in about 2 or 3 years post-COVID.
That's a great number.
So, yeah.
That's a great number that not a lot of other firms can tout. We talk a lot about as we always talk about on the show, I love trials. I know you love trials, but that's not really the popular sentiment nowadays.
It's not, and it changes. There's ebbs and flows with it. Sometimes it's high, sometimes there's low, and a lot of it's going on with what the jury is, doing in other cases a lot of times. And, there's risk involved, there's cost involved. So a lot of times, all that comes into play, and, then your defenses and actually
you're
the
my
case
age,
facts.
right? You're
Yes.
41,
Yep.
you said. And so, there's a big gap. I don't see a lot of these. We're young, I guess, relatively speaking, for lawyers. At least I used to say that. I don't know if that's even true anymore. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I don't know. Middle-aged, whatever, middle-aged lawyer now. But there's not a lot of experience there. I know you've tried some cases. We almost went to trial against each other in a couple cases. Just real quick, you've been in a lot of trials. We're going to talk about them today. You've been selected among the America's Top 100 High Stakes Litigators. You are a barrister for the Oakland County Bar Association, and I just know you've done a great job. And I know. Well, let's tell the viewers how I met you, because I don't. Do you remember? I remember distinctly.
So do I. Yeah.
I was getting on a Delta jetway, and I wasn't sure it was you because I didn't really know you at the time. But I was getting on a Delta jetway. You're in the little tunnel to the plane to go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on a case.
Yep.
We had an expert dep. Go ahead. You go.
This
ahead.
is back in the day too, pre-COVID. So right now, today, we probably would have just done it via Zoom and, from our offices, comfy offices. But no, we're heading to Philadelphia, and met my wife before. She will tell you the truth. I am miserable in the airport and traveling. We've done it a lot. I don't think I've had an enjoyable experience. And then you're going there for work, but like I said, you're not doing it Zoom, so you have your case files with you.
Yeah.
Like, you check them, and there's a lot of anxiety there because it's like, well, if that doesn't make it on its way there, I can't carry it on. We're gonna have some issues. So
traveling with case files sucks, and I've done it a lot. I mean, sometimes I bring a separate bag for the case files. You can do some on computers now, but especially, we had a deposition. We'll talk about the case, but I forget, normally these depositions for experts, it was a bar case. We had a bar expert. I had a bar expert in Philadelphia. This guy trained bouncers at bars. He talked about what bouncers are supposed to do and not do. He talked about how in our particular case, the bouncers were completely negligent. And so you were deposing him, you were putting him under oath and cutting him up. And normally, these types of depositions with other lawyers, I would say maybe last an hour to 2 hours tops. That's usually the range. So I said, well, what the hell? I'm going to be in Philadelphia. It's a city of brotherly love. And I scheduled a beer tour for like 3 hours after the deposition was supposed to start. You must have taken like a 5-hour deposition. So I had a text in the middle of this thing. This guy's going all day long. I had said, get us on the next beer tour. So I eventually made it to the beer tour.
Good.
It was a different one, but it was fine. We had fun. We drank some Yingling. But yeah, let's tell the viewers about that case. Can we talk about that case?
Yeah, let's go for it. That was a
crazy
case. Crazy set of circumstances.
I got a call on like a Saturday morning from my buddy, Sean Colonna, who was out at the bars in Royal Oak, which for our listeners who aren't from around here, Royal Oak, Michigan it's like a suburb of Detroit. It has a downtown with tons of bars. And so this is like the wild and crazy kind of party area that people go out to these bars. Young people, like 21 to 30, whatever, young 30s, go out to these bars. And my buddy Sean said, you're not going to believe this. I was outside this bar in Royal Oak, known as kind of a raucous sports bar. And I saw this dude get like knocked out by the bouncers and taken out by ambulance. And he somehow got the guy's information from his friends. He called the family just randomly, and it turned out to be a sitting Genesee County judge, a very well-respected Genesee County judge. He said, will you represent them? I called the judge. I said, and you don't know me from Adam, and I started to represent him. And then we sued the bar, and that's how you got involved in the case, right?
Yes, yeah. We defended the bar, and then there's a couple of the bouncers that another attorney was representing them.
Right.
And that attorney, very good attorney.
Yeah, he's with you now, Jeff Bullard.
Yeah, he transferred over to our firm earlier this year. So, we're grateful to have him. But that's actually one of the first times I met Jeff Bullard Sr. I knew his son because his son had worked for us. But I did not know. Senior's first time I ever met him too, but I think he was video because he got in so late.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, he couldn't even get a flight out.
Explain to the people why in a bar case. So in that case, I sued the bar and then I sued the bouncers individually.
Right.
Okay, which is usually a smart thing to do if you're a plaintiff's lawyer, at least in the beginning, in my opinion, because you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes they say we're not responsible for our bound. All kinds of crazy things can happen. So you want to we cast a wide net at first, at least as a plaintiff's lawyer, I do. So why does the defendants, in this case, there's an insurance company that covers the bar as usual, but why is it that the insurer or the defense says, hey, we're going to get a different attorney for the bar, which was you were the attorney for the bar, and then get a different attorney for the bouncers?
Well, sometimes in the context of that, it's course and scope. And if you're working in your place of employment, and typically if there's an independent act or a criminal act that comes up, courts say it's not foreseeable. So in the course and scope of their job as a bouncer, it might be more foreseeable than, other cases. But in this context, if the bar was to take they weren't acting within the course and scope of the employment, so the bar would be alleviated from liability there.
Right.
But
so in other words, like the employer can only be held responsible if their employee was doing work, essentially, for lack of a better word.
In furtherance of the job performance. Yeah.
So I always use the example look, bouncers, some of their job is putting hands on people, right? So they can go too far. But if you go to the doctor's office and the doctor punches you in the face, or the PA or whatever, there's not going to be, you can't sue the doctors, generally speaking.
Generally speaking, and the leading case is actually basically that, where I think a nurse had been raping patients or sexually assaulting patients. So the hospital in the leading case on that isn't liable because unless it's really a foreseeable thing. So you got to get into the facts and the data.
Get into the weeds. It's always gray areas. So what about if a stripper rapes somebody, is that in the course and scope? Or?
It depends. Oh, wow. That would be interesting. I would assume the strip club would say, not within the course and scope. We don't pay them. We pay them to dance, not to have sex.
We don't do that here. Yeah. But there's always the gray areas. Well, we'll have to save that one for another. I don't have that case, not yet, but we'll save that for another
it's out
show.
There.
Yeah. So in this case, it was very interesting. This case had it all, I think. So one thing, you do a lot of bar work, right?
I do, yeah.
And one thing that I noticed with bar cases is they're just always a little wild.
Always.
You have drunk people. So you have all these different things. You have lots of people usually at an event. You have videos seem to always go missing in bar cases. Do you feel? I feel like every time it's the video went missing.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen, and the other aspect is nowadays it's like our job as the attorney is to track down eyewitnesses that may have been there, because nowadays all the kids are filming everything. I think their entire life there's a camera following them around. So there could be videos from several different angles, but piecing them together not easy.
Right.
And and a lot of times I think the security cameras are up there, but maybe they're not kept up. Maybe they're not recording a lot of times.
Sometimes
and you
they're
think
not
it
recording,
is,
or they're on a loop. So I've had a lot of cases where they say, our thing tapes over itself after 24, 48, whatever.
Yeah.
But in our case, so our case that we had together, so this judge's son gets on a party bus, goes to Royal Oak, is looking to have a fun night out with probably hundreds or thousands of other similar people from around Michigan who would go to Royal Oak to go out on a Saturday or Friday night. And he, drinks a lot like people do in Royal Oak at night. And for whatever reason, he gets out of the bar. I think he was too drunk. And we're always trying to piece this stuff together.
Yes.
You have different people saying different things, but I think the consensus was no one really was certain exactly why he was ejected. He might have bumped into somebody or something, not intentionally, but was drunk, right? Or something like that.
Well, I think or maybe a little, judgment call on some things where if you're a little unsteady or you bump into somebody or, maybe bump into the wrong person and the bouncers know him a lot of times. And,
Right.
In that sense, and they removed him from the bar in this case. And that's when it
all
got
went
wild.
down. So the kid tries to get back in the bar. And I think for a couple reasons, I think his coat was in there or his wallet or his card, which happens. If you've ever been kicked out of a bar, I plead the fifth on that one, but I had my younger years. So
I'll plead the fifth as well.
yeah,
Mine.
yeah. He also, all of his friends were in there.
Yes.
So he is kind of like stranded outside of a bar without all of his friends. He's from up in Genesee County,
right,
which is like an hour and a half away, right?
Yeah, and down there on a party bus and with the group, and I think like you said, I do remember him saying like my credit card or my debit card is at the bar because you keep an open tab, so and you're an hour and a half from home on a party bus separated from your friends. You don't have when we were young, I mean, I had a debit card and maybe a credit card, right? I mean,
and a couple crumpled up dollars in my pocket.
So who knows if he didn't what he had and whatnot. So there's probably some panic there, and obviously after you add a couple cocktails or a couple beers, it's gonna really get a little bit more confusion, or you're not really thinking and processing things the best, right?
And so he tried to get back in. Now we know what happened next because there was a video, right? From this, they had all these. This particular bar had probably like 30 surveillance cameras over every area of the bar, right? And what was interesting, and because we talk about a lot of times getting this video is so important. In this particular case, the bar told the police because the police investigated, and this was obviously like kind of a VIP case, right? It's a judge's son, right?
Yeah.
Not that they wouldn't investigate anyways, but the police went to the bar and asked for the video, and the bar manager or whatever said, "Oh, our cameras weren't working." So in this particular case, which was unusual, the police a lot of times will say, "Okay," and that might be the end of it. They said in this particular case, they went and they got a warrant.
They did, yeah.
They went back and they raided the bar and they took physical custody. They took out the entire video recording system, which is on like a hard drive computer thing. Yep. They gave it to a forensic expert, like a CSI person, who recovered all the videos.
Yeah.
Remember?
And, yes. And they which was, at a point, I mean, it helps our job, right, as attorneys, because we're now able to piece it together, right? And again, like, for both sides, I mean, when you're adding in there's a couple hundred people in the video that you could probably see.
Right.
We don't know none of them, right? We don't know their names. We don't know anything. And trying to piece together witness statements, a couple hundred people is going to be insane because everybody saw something differently.
And people are drinking. In these bar cases, you have like 15 people watching the same event saying they saw different things.
Yes.
All the time.
Of course. Or they don't remember anything, right?
Yeah.
They had too many after.
Anything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So so they were able to recover it though, right? And then we recovered several different
But that wasn't
angles.
good for your client, Matt, because your client said that the video wasn't working, and then it really was, and the police recovered it. There was a lot of stuff on this case on both sides.
Yeah.
So the video shows the guy essentially trying to get back in. You tell the viewers.
So the video shows him getting back in, and it's a glass door, right? And so the bouncers are standing on one side of the glass door, the front door getting in.
The bouncers are on the inside.
Yeah, the kid the plaintiff in the case is standing on the outside.
And these bouncers are huge, dude. Like 350 pounds, like
they're
big
bodybuilders, power lifters. I mean, massive dudes.
Yeah.
It's like the guys that you walk down the street and they got to get specially made clothes because they're so and they're not, and when we say massive dude, they're not fat. I mean, there's pure muscle there. I mean, those guys are probably benching over 350, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the biggest dudes I've ever seen.
Same.
Yeah.
I'd be scared shitless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't want to.
So there's this tug of war on the door.
Yep.
Where they're like pulling the door shut. Our guy's trying to open it, right?
Yep. He's trying to get back in. And from their context, it's like, well, we got him out. That's the biggest thing, right? Getting him out. And now he's trying to get back in. We don't really know what he's gonna do. I get it. Just the little conversation that they were having through the door. Body language stuff. So yeah, I mean they're trying to do that, and then it escalated.
Big time. So so the defense was the penis defense. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So what was interesting on this is the bouncers, and I think the context of the case, the bouncers get in a little late, right? Like you didn't get them served. They might have came in an amended complaint. I don't recall, but when we went out to Philly for the expert step, I think Jeff, who had the two bouncers representing them, he had just gotten in the case that week, and we hadn't been able to talk to really any of the bouncers. But what comes out, or one of them, I think, the one that actually struck the final blow, we hadn't deposed and we hadn't really been in contact with, right?
Yeah, these guys were hard to find because they went missing. These bouncers sometimes go missing. They're not like W-2 employees who've been working there their whole life. A lot of these guys kind of like show up on a Friday, they get paid in cash, right? There's not like a lot of record. There's not like a time clock, right?
Right. Yeah. And, they probably, and it's probably more likely on, busier nights too, right? Because you get people that call off or, you get overwhelmed and all of a sudden it's okay. Well, we got to get somebody in here to get control of this place. And, that's another mess that, they have to deal with at times. So, yeah. So the penis defense was,
who came up with this defense? This was the most interesting defense I've ever seen.
The first I heard of it was out of the deposition of one of the defendants, one of them that was involved in the altercation, essentially. But, really it's, I think you're just asking questions, trying to figure out what's going on. And I mean, in simplistic terms, he's like, when we were having this tug of war between the door, this kid unbuttoned his fly and pants and shoved his penis up against the door or something. and it's like what
dude,
where
you could hear a pin drop in the deposition.
And the thing is we don't represent the bouncer, right? My client's the bar, and so we're not talking to the bouncers, right? Because they're represented. We don't have a clue what he's gonna say and how it's gonna go. So I think we're all
in shock.
All kind of like, what the hell's going on?
We're
here?
all in shock. And so just so our viewers know, so what happened was we have on video the bouncers. I mean, they pretty brutally beat this kid. He was on the ground. He tried to get up, and then one of the big bouncers came up and hit him with probably, you described it as like the cleanest punch you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Right in his face. It was so bad that he lost consciousness before he hit the ground. So he literally went down like I don't know, how would you describe it?
I mean, it's the easiest way to describe it is, you guys have seen the, probably MMA knockouts, like where you just fall, like
they free fall down.
Yeah, you free fall down and you have no control over your body. When I first saw the video, I'm like, that's like, we're about the same age, so hopefully you get the reference, but it's like Mike Tyson's Punch Out on like Nintendo or whatever. That's what it was like.
And the poor kid went down. He hit his head on the pavement because he was unconscious. Then he had a brain bleed. So he had internal bleeding and brain damage. So it was a pretty serious thing. So the defense was, which was always thought, I don't know, these bouncers thought this was a good defense, but that it was the penis defense, that they had to do Mike Tyson's Punch Out on him because his penis was a clear and present danger to them or the bar, right?
That's something. I mean, they were very infuriated by the fact that they saw a penis that night. They did not. That was one of the things that they had on their checklist that we're not dealing with tonight.
Yeah. So now show them. You brought the transcript.
Yeah, I did.
We want to put this transcript up on the screen so our viewers can see it. This is real. This is when people say I can't believe this is real law. This is real.
It happens.
This happened. And so, how did I deal with the penis defense? For those who are just listening and cannot read this transcript that's up on the screen,
it was excellent lawyering in the sense. No, I mean, you were able to, you kind of, I think we're all shocked, right? And it's like, okay, well, where is this headed to now, right? I mean,
yeah.
where, and it's like, I think you said, so, you clarified, like, did you just really say he flashed you essentially, and showed his penis and did all this? And he's like, yes. And then I think you then followed it up with, well, describe it.
Yeah.
and
how big was it?
How big was it? And I think he replies when you say, how big was it? I don't know, probably bigger than yours though.
Yeah.
And and the next line was my second favorite in the whole thing because one of the senior partners at the time, who was handling the case, older guy,
conservative guy,
very
straight
conservative,
shooter, straight,
no nonsense.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to know him really well with working with him. He's got a really good sense of humor, but when he's between the lines in a dep or a trial, it's serious, straightforward. Yeah. And
Tom Mazzoni,
good guy. And but he
started getting real uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, and the best response out of it, because I can picture it, and I'm glad we don't have a video, so I have just my image of it that I created in my head of Tom saying, no, he doesn't object or anything. He just, okay, no.
No. Yeah.
and I can just picture Tom saying, okay, no, like we're not going down this road.
Yeah.
And then what you did after was you went and clarified it again. And then in response, he pled the fifth.
Yeah, which was amazing.
He pleads the fifth, and you go, so let me get this straight. You're pleading the fifth because of, you're pleading the fifth on how big this individual's penis was. And he goes, yeah, that's right. And it's like, oh my God, this case is now turned completely.
Wild. That was a case that's gone wild.
Yeah.
We ultimately resolved the case.
Yep.
You did a great job on when we flew out to Philadelphia with the expert dep. And just so our viewers who are pleading the fifth is you're right against self-incrimination, right? So it's like, did you kill the plaintiff? I plead the fifth, you know? So that was very interesting. And when you assert the fifth in a civil case, you have to do it at trial. So at trial, I would have had to call this bouncer on the stand and say, sir, how big was the penis? And he would have had to look at the jury and say, I plead the fifth.
Right. And there's no blanket Fifth Amendment privilege, right? So you can't just, in a civil case, right? So in a criminal case, you can just sit there and say, well, the defendant's not taking the stand. And that happens all the time. But in the civil case, you don't have that option. And then you get to, how big was the penis? And I plead the fifth, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, you get like an inference that it's
bad.
Yeah. Good for the other side, essentially.
Good for my client, bad for the
other. So it becomes, really detrimental in that sense. So
I wonder if the penis defense has ever been successfully applied to a bar case. Like, we had to beat him up because we were so disgusted by his penis, big, small, whatever it is.
I don't think the Philly expert in that sense had ever heard that one either.
No, but you did a great job. You were very prepared for an expert deposition, which are hard depositions, don't you think?
Not easy.
Because like when you're deposing a normal man or woman or human being, they usually don't have legal experience. But when you have to go against an expert witness who's been in through 100 depositions or whatever, it's a little trickier, isn't it?
It is. And the experts are a little bit harder in and of itself just because of what they're allowed to testify to, right? A witness's personal knowledge, like just a lay witnesses. So it's like, just your personal observations, what you saw, heard, smelled, all of that. They can testify to that. But in an expert, they get the whole gamut, and then they can, do their own research. They can look at their own articles, rely on their own experience, their own training, their own education, and then come up with the full opinion. So it's a universe of just, and the biggest thing is just seeing what their opinions are and then, going through those.
How did you learn how to take Stitch Good expert depths? Did they send you? Because sometimes I'll say, I don't want to deal with this expert because it's a lot of preparation.
It is.
It's a lot of research as a lawyer. You got to go through their whole file. Was it just like, Tom Mazzoni or somebody saying, I don't want to do this right now, you do it, Consolo? Or how is it that you got started doing all these? Because you're kind of the expert slayer, I was told.
I'll give that title to Randazzo. I'll be the second command of that. But
expert slayer junior.
Yeah, but no, I mean, really good, obviously really good mentoring. I still, like I said, I mean, we've got some good accomplishments, but we're still young. We're still growing. We're still learning. And at that time, it was probably almost 10 years ago. So we were probably like 5, 6, 7 years out, maybe at the best. So just great mentoring. We do a lot of internal training. Bruce Truex, Anthony, Tom. And the thing is about any type of dep, you got to be yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I can't go in there and try to be Tom, right? And vice versa. So
we say that everything. The most important thing is authentic attorney.
Yes.
Be authentic.
And so you go in there and you just, you really try. My thing is the prep work is a collection of data. You really got to know the case. You got to know the intricate facts. And, you want to at least have some type of idea what their opinion's going to be beforehand. But, I mean, a lot of times in the civil side, you really have seen this expert. That one was an interesting one, right? Mr. Iannucci, I think was his name.
Yeah.
Out of Philadelphia.
Ed Iannucci.
Ed Iannucci.
The bouncer trainer.
Out of Philadelphia. So there's not like a lot of data that, we have. I mean, he hasn't been used in a lot of cases.
Right.
And at least in Michigan in that sense. So, you got to really go out and kind of do your own research, see what he's going to say, and you just go through it.
What's your philosophy on taking a deposition of an expert? Because I kind of tell my guys, look, if you think this case is going to go to trial, you don't want to use all your tricks in your bag, right? So like, what's your philosophy on that?
It's like you said, I think a lot of times it's a judgment call because I think there's cases, we've had them, that you just know this isn't settling, right? The demands are way too far apart.
Right.
The evaluation of the injuries too far apart, or you're not seeing eye to eye on that.
Yeah.
Or you can start gauging the clients too, right? Because I mean, I've had cases, with working with insurance adjusters and their teams, it's a little bit easier because like they're more sophisticated. That's what they do for a living is they're claims adjusters or litigation adjusters, right? So they take all that into account. But on the plaintiff side, you get a lot of articles aren't written about plaintiffs winning, $10 at trial. I mean, it's 10 million, it's 100 million. So I think a lot of times the plaintiffs individually will have their own idea of what it's worth and, the effect that it had on their life, if, in that sense. And sometimes it's out of your control, it's out of my control. So
my clients listen to me though, a 99 point.
And it's good that they do.
But a lot of lawyers, they don't. They don't listen.
Yeah. So, and I think once you start gauging that, you get the expert set up for deposition, and a lot of times, some of it's dependent. We have these conversations all the time. I just had one. I know Anthony's been on the show. We've been kicking the tires on. Do we bring it up now? Do we bring it up at trial?
Yeah, I agree. It's a judgment call.
Because
because if I want to settle the case, and I think we're going to settle the case, or we can, sometimes I will unleash all my ammo.
Yes.
And just eviscerate the expert or whatever, because then under the anticipation that the case will get settled and that will help it get settled. I mean,
yeah, I agree. And, a lot of times that's the case, but, then that's where it gauges like, well, even if I go in and just destroy their expert and I evaluate this case at, say you're on the sense of you're evaluating at $1 million and the defense is at like 50,000. Even if I go in and destroy this expert,
it's not going to bridge the gap.
I mean, even if they come up 10 times, we're still $500,000
Right.
apart. So you start looking at that, and then you want to be thorough in a discovery dep and really kind of box them in,
Right.
and then you can start working with it at trial. I can get into this case real quick. We haven't talked about it, but I had a trucking case, sideswipe. Good lawyers on the other side, but they had a plaintiff treater, orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Kornblum, who, did a lot of work for them, a lot of surgeries. And, I take his discovery dep. I know this case going to trial.
Yeah,
I know where it's at. I know where the sides are, and it's, probably 6 months before trial. I know it's going. So when I take the discovery dep, everything I did was to set it up for that trial dep.
Right.
I already had. I had my
impeachment
documents. I had my, really the documents that are going to destroy right there. So if I needed to pull it out in the discovery dep, I could have.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I refrained from it. And then we get into the trial. I locked him in, and then
you saved the stuff.
Then
you saved the good stuff for trial.
Yes.
Right.
And then a lot of things that he said, were, it sounded good for them, right? But it wasn't good.
Right.
And the amount of times he's testified, I had the best part about this. We go into the trial dep, and we're sitting here in like the video conferencing here. We're sitting at a large table, and I had his Rule 26 disclosures, which, in federal court,
it's what you have to give when you hire an expert. You have to give basically a list of all the cases they've ever done before, right?
Yeah, within the last 4 or 5 years, and the publications and all that. So I have his Rule 26 disclosures. I received them from another defense counsel, knowing that I was going in there. And I had gotten them a couple months before the trial dep. And a paralegal and I from our team, an excellent job, but she called all the defense. We looked it up on the docket, the register of actions through we looked the cases up, got the defense counsel's information, emailed or called them. I ended up, there's 109 cases, I think, on his sheet, Rule 26 disclosures. I ended up with about 80, 85 deposition transcripts.
Wow.
So I go into the trial dep, and I got a stack like this, man, just a couple feet. And, we're going through the dep, and he actually got so flustered within the first minute of me testifying, takes the microphone off of here and slams it down and storms out. Cools off after 5 minutes and comes back in. And then we start going at it again. And he eventually got to the point where we're sitting about as close as we are, the records are here. And he takes the stack of deps, 80 deposition transcripts, and just throws them at me.
On video?
On video.
No way.
On video. And it's all there. I'm like, and I mean, you get in a sense, and you see, like, if you have an expert throwing,
oh yeah,
and this guy isn't like a
so
hired expert.
So you've done your job.
Yeah.
You've done your job. If the expert witness is throwing things at you, insulting you, swearing at you, then you've done your job.
And this is all videoed. So, I'm under control, right? I'm not because it's going to be played for the jury. And, that's an important thing for the jury, not to think like, I would have thrown it at him too, so it was definitely, it wasn't a great reaction out of him. And I'm like, I kind of just sat there and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
You do have a way to really get people under their skin.
Yeah, I have an innate ability to get under people's skin somehow.
Well, look, we still got some cases.
Yeah. Just ask my wife about that.
Yeah, dude, I have the same way. I had a guy on the stand up in Flint. He was the head of the Department of Corrections on their internal affairs. He got so angry at me after I caught him in like 10 lies that he started screaming in front of the jury. This was live, right? Normally this stuff's on video for these experts. And he started screaming like, because the defendant was represented by the Attorney General. It was the state of Michigan, okay? This ended up being the largest race discrimination verdict in the history of Michigan. So the state of Michigan's the defendant. They're represented by the Attorney General. This guy started screaming at me in front of the jury, if you think I'm a liar, if they think I'm a liar, and he starts pointing at the jury, if they think I'm such a liar, then charge me with perjury. And I said to him in front of the jury, I said, well, that's the Attorney General. That's your lawyer's job. So,
what a comeback at that point.
Yeah, it was great. So, all right, let's talk about some more bar cases because these bar cases are crazy. I really believe they have the potential to be, when we consider wild in terms of just like, we had the penis defense. I mean, it's just crazy because you have drunk people. A lot of times you have bouncers who like don't give two craps. It's just like crazy, right? It's crazy stuff. Sometimes you have small town stuff going on. I'm doing a case right now in Port Huron where this young boy, and it's just like crazy things happen out of nowhere. So I have this young boy in Port Huron who went to the bar, was having a fun night. This bar dumps out at like 2 a.m, right? Everybody gets dumped out onto the streets because they close it down.
Yep.
And a big fight breaks out. He gets pushed. He's not in the fight. He's around the fight. He gets pushed into a girl by the people fighting. The girl happens to be the girlfriend of one of the bouncers.
Oh, God.
Who is also like a former police officer trained in jiu-jitsu, who moonlights and does this, which is also why this shit gets crazy.
Yes.
10 guys take this guy down. They sit on him. They basically asphyxiate him to death. And the police come, the police sit on him, and the kid's dead. The kid ends up getting killed. He goes to a bar to have some drinks, and it's scary. And the things I say with my children of just the most little things. We're driving with my son Jonathan. He has you wear the lap belt, and then you have the seatbelt around your shoulder, right?
Yep.
And he doesn't like the seatbelt around his shoulder, so he takes it and he puts it on the other side of his body, basically behind him. I did the same thing as a kid, but I know exactly what's going to happen if we get into a car crash. So I'm so paranoid. I say, Jonathan, you must wear that seatbelt around your shoulder at all times. Natalie, I'm driving with my wife. She puts her feet up on a long road trip on the dash. I tell her, you got to put your feet down. If the airbag goes off, your legs are going to kick up over your head and you're going to rip they're going to rip out of your hip. It's just all this, we just see all this crazy stuff.
It is. And it makes you almost paranoid as a parent or as a husband or as just in normal. I mean, I know you're talking, I have a 20-year-old and he's getting into that, we're talking about bar fights and he's been to his fair share, I'm sure. But, we have the talks like, listen, if something happens, get out because you're going to be caught in the fray. I mean, you and I have both seen shootings happen inside there. Crazy
shootings,
stuff.
Knivings. Dude, I had, when I was in college, I was in law school in Washington, D.C., I came back for Christmas. And I would come back every year for Christmas. I lived in D.C. for 3 years. And we went to a bar in downtown Grand Rapids. It was, I forget the name of it, but it was a big bar in downtown Grand Rapids. And it was Christmas time. So I wore this like obnoxiously puffy, large sweater. This Christmas sweater, right?
Yeah.
And we went out to the bar and we're having a great night. It's me and all my buddies. And my buddies, everybody's drinking. Everybody had too much to drink. And we're at a bar and this guy who we didn't know started ripping on my sweater, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever, dude. I'm not going to engage. It was some guy from like Lowell, some like farmer guy who wanted to show his
We're just out here having fun.
Yeah. So it was some guy, some tough guy. And so, he said, he called me a derogatory homophobic slur that I won't repeat on the program. And I made some snide comment like, whatever, dude, like go back to your farm or something like that. And I turned around and he put me in a chokehold from behind.
Ugh.
And he took me down. Now, this is crazy. Like out of nowhere, right?
Right.
Like,
you're just sitting there and 30 seconds earlier, you have no idea this guy even exists, and you're having fun, and next thing you're in a chokehold,
right? And one of my friends went to Penn State, was the head of their hockey team, is now an engineer, making good money, doing a professional job, but he was also a little bit psycho, and he saw this, so all hell breaks loose inside the bar. I'll never forget this. I walk outside the bar, and I ended up having to go to court and be a witness, and it was very uncomfortable. But I go outside the bar, and I see this guy's brother. He's stomping this guy's face outside the bar on the pavement. There's blood coming out. And I'm like, somebody's going to die.
Yeah, let's get out.
It went from having fun, having beers, to getting choked out, to now one of my friend's brothers, who I hardly know, potentially, so I had to go over there and grab these people. I ended up, there was assault charges were brought. I had to go to court. But this is just how things can escalate out of nowhere.
And they escalate fast. It's like, and
it's scary, dude.
It is. And I've seen it too, been a part of it. The worst in my background, though, is I got a jaywalking ticket coming out of a bar.
Yeah.
When I was in college. So
you're such a bad boy.
I know.
You're such a bad boy.
I was very fortunate, though, because or unfortunate, because I was pretty, I've never been that big. I mean, we're not, you're a little bit taller, but I've never been that big. So, I've always had, the bigger people around me, like,
Me
too. The hockey goalie kind of come in.
I always run my mouth.
Yeah. I
have a sharp tongue, but I always have big guys around me and by me.
And
but you can get into trouble that way.
Yes. And
especially at 2 a.m.
Yes. So if someone in my group is pissed off the other side and I'm with them, there's a lot of times that they'll come after me because they think, they're going to take on the smaller one, which escalates things. But, I've been in my fair share of altercations, I guess.
It's just scary how they can. And nowadays, somebody can have a gun. We had a case.
Oh, yeah.
In Battle Creek where this guy was at a bar. A scuffle broke out. They start dragging people out. The bouncers were allowed to carry guns, these private bouncers. And we're not talking about like highly trained security guards. Right. We're talking about the guy down the street who is a gun nut. And he pulled out a gun and he shot the guy. Yeah.
And I do recall seeing the video of that case. And the person that was shot really wasn't a part of the overall altercation.
Right. He got dragged into it.
He got really there was just a small altercation that escalated in size. And next thing you know, the big crowd, and you get pushed closer to the altercation. Right. And I think he was trying to get somebody out. It looked like he was trying to separate.
You see your friend getting your ass beat or whatever. You want to help out. And next thing you know, it's so crazy. That's what happened in my Port Huron case that's in federal court right now. This kid got pulled in, and it's scary. But, okay, you told me before the show, you started telling me this case I've never heard about before because we don't have a ton of time left.
Fine.
But I wanted to hear about 2 cases that you have. But this one is insane. It's wild. Tell us about this case where some guy lived in the basement of a bar, some bum or something. Yeah, tell us about this case, Matt.
He was probably like our age at the time, low 30s. He had a rough life, and it was in a Hamtramck bar, and this guy really was a couch surfer, in and out of jail to an extent. But I met him, very nice and polite guy. Like, you wouldn't expect that, but it had fallen on some rough times, and he did some work around the bar, and the bar owner also had an apartment above the bar. And then
that's like the classic Hamtramck bar, right? For our viewers, Hamtramck's this little Polish area that's nestled in the middle of Detroit, and it is these dive bars, right?
Essentially. And it's a smaller community too, so everybody knows everybody, right? So
it's an old style where the owner lives at the bar.
Yes.
The old like Irish, type thing. Some of the bars there, by the way, I went to a bar there and it has a urinal at the bar.
That's pretty cool.
So the old Polish Sea League, you don't even have to leave your beer to go pee. They literally had, this was from like 100 years ago, they had a literal massive urinal. So you just,
like the
trough? Penis defense,
the trough.
Our guy would have been fine in the other case. He could have took his wiener out right at the bar and just started going at it.
And the bouncers either would have had to let it go or they would have had to beaten everybody's ass.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been the great. That would have been even a better penis case.
The penis defense would not work in Hamtramck.
No, it would not.
No way. They're like, what are you talking about? Everybody takes
Everybody does
out.
it.
Sorry to interrupt you. No, so you have this guy.
He lives in like an extra bedroom in the basement of the bar.
Okay.
Yeah, and he for his rent or whatnot. He did handyman stuff around the
For the
apartments.
bar and the bar?
And the apartments and the bar. And he, paid just kind of cash. And, he helped out when he could, did some painting, all of that.
Would he get to go up and have free beers and stuff too?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually, you know what? I don't think he was drinking because of his prior issues. So he
okay.
might have been on probation. So that was, and again, like tall, slender guy. He had longer hair, which will come into play because at the time I did anyways too. I've had my hair a lot like yours too. So I'm not anti-long hair. I've mentioned it maybe once or twice, but I am not anti-long hair. I loved it. My wife hated it. That's why I cut it off because I got
That's the
sick.
hockey way.
Yeah, I got sick of it. So, and by the way, anyone that knows hockey or follows hockey, I think the bouncers a lot like goalies. There's a little bit something, going on. Yeah. I'm not standing there taking pucks, right? So that's So, we get into there and the bartender is in there and she knows the guy that's living in the basement. She knows that. And her brother's coming in. And she knows that her brother's a loud mouth and, kind of one of those types of drunks, right? Probably it's very similar to the guy that you encountered when you were home from college.
Yeah.
And he is in there and over time he's getting hammered. Her brother is, and obviously she's working, so she's probably giving him a ton of drinks and all of this.
So the bartender's brother's there.
A patron there. Yes.
Okay.
And he's got a mouth on him. And he I'll tell you about his girlfriend's step later. But as he's getting drunk, he's running his mouth, and this kid, the homeless kid that's living in the basement or whatever, becomes the target of his mouth. And it's a lot of homophobic wording, and this guy had enough, and he had just gotten so pissed. And so he goes downstairs, all the testimony. This isn't a place that has cameras, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
so the drunk guy at the bar is like completely belittling and demeaning.
Yes. And he goes, so he just must have snapped, right? I mean, you have your breaking point. I don't think there had been much physical, if anything.
Yeah. Does he go get a gun?
Yeah, actually, no. What made him snap is he said, "Suck my dick, pretty boy."
Penis.
Yes,
it's
another penis.
It sets people off.
So this guy storms downstairs where he knows where the handyman equipment is, where it's at because he's doing the work. Comes back up with a 4-foot metal level.
What's a metal level?
So it's a construction tool, like a
big rectangle thing.
Yeah, big.
Like a rebar thing?
Just a big, almost like a 4-foot baseball bat that's made of metal.
Yeah,
essentially, right? And a big heavy duty thing. And he comes up from the side of the guy while he's sitting on his bar stool and takes a baseball swing and strikes him in the side of the head.
Like cold cocks him?
Yeah, like the bouncer who had the cleanest hit on a punch I've ever seen. This one was one of the cleanest hits I've ever seen with a metal leveled to somebody's head.
Wow.
Or heard about it. So the guy just, smacked down off the bar stool. Very similar type injuries as to what, the other guy had.
Did the guy die?
No, he survived. I think he had a little bit of other prior issues, so it didn't really help him. But, I take the dep, and the guy's girlfriend's there.
Who's?
Too, the patron that gets knocked out. His girlfriend's there, and she sees it all. And so I'm taking...
So the guy sued the bar?
Yeah.
It got hit?
Yep.
Okay.
And so I'm taking the girlfriend's dep. She's obviously a witness and all of that, and I'm taking her dep, and she goes back to work. And I know I did an effective job in the dep because she's telling her entire work how big of an asshole I was, like how difficult the dep was, like how, all of this stuff. And I'm like, all right, I got to her. What's funny was she's talking about the deposition at work, and I get a text from one of my wife's best friends.
So she's working at the bar that's being sued by her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, no, she's just the girlfriend. She's got another job at a tier.
Oh, okay.
So my wife's best friend works with her. It's a coworker of hers.
No way.
I didn't know this, right? And
That's
so
crazy.
she's going back and she's like, yeah, this some asshole young kid at Secrest, and I'll pull him up. I'll show it. And my wife's friend is obviously then sitting there thinking like,
Oh my
oh
God.
shit, it's probably Matt.
Yeah.
And yeah, it ended up, and she texts me. She's like, did you just take a deposition with this person? I was like, yep. And she goes, oh my God. And, so it was
Small
funny.
world.
Yeah, it was.
So what ended up happening with the case?
We resolved it. We had a lot of, issues because that kid went to jail, right? And a lot of it, we talked about the course and scope, but was he really an employee working at the time? If he was at that point, he has never been in any type of security or bouncer role. So at most, he's a handyman. And again, is it really foreseeable that your handyman's going to do something like that?
Yeah.
That was a little bit different because he didn't have a security role there. So it made that defense, the course and scope, much stronger
a lot better,
than it would have if he was a bouncer.
Bouncers have to use force and have to, it's
part of their job.
Excessive and what's not. That's interesting. Wow, that's crazy. See, these bar cases are just are crazy. And the other problem with bar cases is a lot of times there's a lot of fault to go around. Okay, I still think, and we could disagree exactly, but on the penis defense case, that our kid, first of all, I don't think he ever took out his penis. We zoomed in on the video a million times. I don't think he did. And also, how do you?
We'll never know because he pled the fifth.
Yeah, we'll never know. So, but they would say, well, it was his fault for taking out his wee-wee, or I've had cases where guys have used a racial slur and then gotten their ass beat by a bouncer or something. And is it right to have your ass beat by a bouncer? No, but it sure makes your case a lot harder if you used a racial slur.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Anytime, yeah. And yeah, it depends on a lot of the action. Like in the bouncer case too, he'd come back a couple of times. The second time, the one that we're talking about that happened in Royal Oak, he'd come back once and had gotten, I think I watched the video the other day where he got slapped and then shoved. And the shoving actually took, probably because he doesn't have the best balance and stuff and he'd been drinking, actually ended up in the street on the shove. So, I mean, there's not a lot of room, but the sidewalk, but he did that and then he came back and then that's when he got punched. So it's like, you just wish everybody wasn't drunk and just that stuff never that kid's not going to do it.
All this time there's been bar brawls for thousands of years. There probably will be. It'll keep us busy. These bars have insurance. It's interesting. There'll be lots of wild and crazy bar cases, and we'll continue to talk about them. I love sitting around sometimes at the bar and talking with fellow attorneys about these cases gone wild. That's how this show got made. Because I said, we love this way too much, and nobody would believe the shit that we talk about.
That's it's and when we get together, right, we see each other. If we're not handling a case together at that time, or we don't have anything that's big, that's what we say.
That's what we say.
Got any funny cases going on? Any cool things?
Cases?
Any wild depth stories? Anything? Because I guess that's how we entertain ourselves at times.
So you just, I know, I don't know when, but it seemed like it was just yesterday. But I can't keep track of time nowadays. I know that you and Tony Randazzo tried a huge case against a very prominent plaintiff's lawyer in the Detroit metro area, who probably, other than me, tries the most cases. In Michigan, because there's not a lot of us that do, who's a very good lawyer. And I thought this was first of all, this is a sad case on all sides. And I thought it was a very tough case for the plaintiff.
It was.
So tell the viewers about this case.
Yeah, so really what we have is a young 19-year-old female that's coming back from her boyfriend's house. It's about 11:55 at night. Her curfew is...
So dark out?
Yeah. Her curfew, and it's on a more of a, I think it was like a 25-mile road. So in this area, in like Shelby Township, it's more of a rural area for you not aware, and especially there's not a lot of lighting in this particular strip. We'd been out there several times. So she's driving home. She's gonna turn left. There's 4 lanes. She's gonna turn left and go into her subdivision. Well, she makes the turn left into it, and next thing you know, she ends up doing almost a 180 and ends up on the brim, and she had gotten hit. And
Hit by what?
well, she gets out. She doesn't really know at this point, and it sounds like she got hit by a rocket, but she gets out and she sees the motorcycle there, and she's like, "Oh my god! Like I just got hit by a motorcycle," and her house is literally visible from the entrance, right? But she calls mom and dad because they're home, and they come over to the scene. I mean, everybody, they call the police, and obviously, and they start looking for the motorcyclist. And it's truly a sad case. I mean, got to know through the course of the litigation, the decedent or the victim's family, and watch them testify. I mean, watch them testify about him as a person, and all intents and purposes, kid is a great guy.
The kid on the motorcycle.
Yeah, and it's COVID time. I mean, and so he's actually got one of the only jobs that you could really go in for. He's working at Amazon.
Yeah.
So he's going in and he's riding his motorcycle.
Night shift or something.
Yeah, yeah, and
no drugs or alcohol or
nothing. No. They had the ME do it, and that was it might have been one of the last times Dr. Werner Spitz testified live in person.
Yeah, who's one of the most famous. He probably is the most famous medical examiner in the history of the world. He did Kennedy assassination, John F. Kennedy. He did that plane ride that went down that killed all those people in Detroit like decades and decades ago.
John Benet Ramsey,
Benet Ramsey.
Casey Anthony.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on.
So I have a case. It's going to be his final case.
Oh, yeah?
Because he did a video dep.
Oh.
The case then got dismissed. The Michigan Supreme Court hopefully is going to bring it back.
Oh, that's the one you just argued?
Yeah, that's the one I just argued. So God willing.
Yeah, he was, I mean, tell you what about an expert dep, and this is live at trial. I ordered talking about preparation, I had his books. Like that he wrote
the books.
He wrote the books, and
autopsy people.
All MEs will come in and say that's the Bible of autopsy, and how to figure it out. So I ordered the book. I had read it, just for cross-examination, because
he's so good.
I mean, how am I gonna?
And he just has that aura around him. But anyways, all right, we digress. All right,
he's mid-90s. I can't match a guy like that, right? So I got to try to know what he knows. But
so anyways, in your case, did the motorcyclist sue then?
The motorcyclist sued.
His family.
His family did,
right?
And based on why they sued, it appeared based on the evidence was the police had the motorcycle. This is at 50 miles an hour. The police had the motorcyclist at 77.
77?
77 and a 50.
In a 50.
Yep.
See, that's tough right away, because I bet every single viewer out there's been on the highway and seen a motorcyclist, zoom in between their cars and think, what a crazy asshole that guy is.
Yeah, or that's how you wind up dead on a motorcycle.
Right. Right.
And
my uncle did. He was 18 years old. I never got to meet him. He died on a motorcycle in Pennsylvania.
And there's not a lot of room to, there's not a lot of room. And so we're getting into the case, and the plaintiff's expert, along with the police, pegged him at 77. But what they didn't realize was that the police stopped the calculations at how fast the motorcyclist was going when they determined that he was at least 77. So the way, it was an off-center collision. So they could, and then the rotation of the cars, they didn't have to go all the way through. They had the motorcyclist at 77.
They're like, at 77, we don't need to go. So he couldn't have been going faster.
Yes, and that's what our expert, we had two, one of a biomechanical and a vision type expert, but both of them really testified to that.
How fast?
Both of them had them going well over 100.
100 miles an hour?
Yes.
So how does a plaintiff win that case?
Didn't, and I think it would be very difficult to do that. Especially because, maybe if the girl had some alcohol or something, but everything came back clean. All of that. Very difficult case, and I think it was.
Did she just not see him? I mean, sometimes it's
she
hard
didn't see him. So what part of the defense was, and then there was a witness behind our girl that was driving, and he said he never saw it. He could hear it. He could hear the engine revving, and our girl's like, I had my eyes out there. So part of what the defense was is, did this motorcyclist shut his light off?
Why would he shut his light off?
Well, my dad's a former detective, and he said, if you end up in a high-speed chase or, with a motorcyclist, they'll shut their lights off. Can't find them. And so he didn't want to be seen.
Why would he shut his light off just going down the road?
Because he's going so fast, right? It's hard to pick that up. Now, I don't know if he did or didn't. He was just going so fast where I guess you could have seen it, but not registered, not registered the fact that it's a motorcyclist.
I've almost changed lanes and you can't see there's only one light. You look for two lights, your brain normally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to be careful. It's crazy.
You ever driven in California with the lane splitting? Yeah, they can drive in the middle of lanes.
They're allowed to?
Yeah.
Legally?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, it's the scariest thing.
They've done it on 94 where they're not allowed to do it.
Yeah, but
I've seen it in Detroit. It's crazy.
But the fact that it's legal there and you make that lane, how the hell are you going to see them,
That's what they do in if you ever go to Colombia or South America, they're driving all in between. These people get hit so much, it's crazy and scary.
And there's nothing, there's no protection.
There's no protection. So what happened with this case? So
it went to a jury verdict. It was one of those where you just couldn't get close enough on the valuation. Went to a jury verdict. They came back with no liability against the girl.
Your client.
My client, yep. And, it was very, the other attorney on the other side, had us on our toes. You think you have an expert saying this motorcycle is going over 100. Well, the respect that we have for that other attorney, like I would have with you is, this isn't a clear-cut winner. There's going to be stuff, and he did his job. It was,
sad case, it sounds like. I can tell from talking to you about it, you won the case, but it seemed just sad for everybody.
It was, and I think sometimes it gets lost. Our client's 19. So to us, it was almost like a vindication of, we don't want any negligence put on her because she's 19. She's going to be carrying this around for the rest of her life, knowing she even had, maybe if they would have put 90 and 10% at fault for, this young man dying, that's a horrible thing to live with. So it was very much, very emotional case.
What did she say to you?
As far as after
it was over, yeah.
We exchanged some text messages. She had been living in Florida, but just that she was thankful, of everything. And it was very tough. I tried not to try to give her, some. It wasn't really a conversation of hey, thank you so much for doing what you did. It was more about how to get over this whole situation.
Yeah.
A lot of it, and you can put it in the rear view and go on to the best of your ability. Know that, 8 jurors heard everything that we had against one of the best plaintiffs attorneys out there, and, found that you weren't any part negligent. But again, she still has to live with that.
Yeah.
And
sure.
and I don't mean to take away from what that family lost either, but
sad case.
Sad case all around, and they all have to live with it.
They all
have to live with it. Yeah.
Well, Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. This was great. We're going to have to do this in another 5 years and have penis defense, bar defenses part 2. And I'm sorry to our listeners for this is going to go down in history as the penis show. And I'm sorry that's your show will be known as the case has gone wild. Penis has gone wild.
Penis has gone wild. Fair enough. Sometimes these things get off the rails, so that's where we're at. So.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening to another great episode of Cases Gone Wild. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. We could have another half an hour, 2 hours of some of these crazy cases. If you like the show, don't forget to share it with your friends. If you or someone you know needs help, don't forget, please go to our website, markolaw.com, MARKO law.com. We'll get you help, or we'll get you to where you need to go. I hope that you don't have any type of penis-involved cases, but if you do, we'll help you too. Also, you can give us a call at 833-MARKO-LAW, MARKOlaw.com. And special thanks to Matt Consolo of Secrest Wardle, who Nicole Secrest used to be called, who is an excellent attorney, and for having us on our show. We'll see you in another 2 weeks on another episode of Cases Gone Wild.